Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avataravarishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. We are continuing, it's okay?
It's okay.
The big screen? No.
It's good.
We continue our discussion. This is Madhvacharya's Dvaita philosophy. So, today we are going to discuss a very important topic which is important and relevant, very significant to all the systems of Vedanta, like Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, Vallabha, Nimbarka, Chaitanya, all these, it's called the 7 schools of Vedanta, Advaita, Visishta Advaita and Dvaita. And then after that there are 3-4 important schools, relatively minor compared to Advaita, like Vallabha, Nimbarka, Chaitanya and others. Now, one topic that is discussed in all these schools is Jnanam and Bhakti, that is the highest spiritual knowledge and the path of devotion. Bhakti is called. So, Jnanam and Bhakti, these are 2 important topics which are discussed by all these philosophers. Not only by all these philosophers, but all the saintly teachers of Vedantic tradition. Now, one charge that is put forward by all non-Advaitins against Advaita is that Advaita emphasizes the negation of the universe. It emphasizes the fact, according to the doctrine, that this world is Maya, it is Mithya, it is non-existent. Of course, obviously, it is a very wrong a charge that is no philosophical foundation. The second charge is Advaita neglects bhakti or devotion. We already discussed many times and we emphasize the fact that Dvaita never negates the reality of empirical experiences. It only tells you that, reminds you that all these empirical experiences are necessarily impermanent, transient. They come and they go. Now, having said that, next topic, Bhakti. In fact, even Ramanuja and Madhva, all of them, even Bhaskara, who came after Shankara and before Ramanuja, they all sometimes they chanced, they criticized Advaita as a kind of subjective idealism, very similar to Vijnanavada of the later Vijnanavada of Buddhist called Pravritti Vijnanavada, which emphasized the non-existence of empirical world. So Advaita also negates the empirical reality. So there's a great charge that is put forward by all these philosophers. So Mayavadam Asashastram Prachannam Bauddham Uchyate is a well-known Purana, is a Padma Purana, which of later origin. So, this Padma Purana is a statement is the Mayavadam Asashastram Prachannam Bauddham Uchyate. See, this doctrine of Maya, that is according to them the doctrine of Advaita. Advaita is not doctrine of Maya. Advaita is the doctrine of Brahman. Brahman is only reality. That's a fundamental preposition of Advaita. But again, the critics of Advaita, they make the wrong allegation that Advaita emphasizes the unreality of empirical world, which actually is very ridiculous if you really study Advaita text. So, Mayavadam Asat Shastram, it is a wrong system of philosophy. It is a kind of Buddhism or Vijnanavada, to be specific, in incognito. And you remember that Shankaracharya has devoted many pages in the Brahmasutra Bhashya to negate, to refute the Vijnanavada school of Buddhism, which overemphasized, at least during the time of Shankaracharya, maybe not in Buddha's teachings. You don't find this so much stress in Buddha's original teachings in the Pali canon. But this was a later development in Buddhist philosophical tradition. The Vijnanavada which negated everything in this world. So Advaita is like that, negating the whole world. That's one important charge. So actually, this was taken up by Madhvacharya as some kind of an important, authentic statement. And also Bhaskara's commentary on Brahma Sutras. Bhaskara came after Shankara and before Ramanuja. Vigidam Vichinnamulam Mahayanika Bauddhagadidam Mayavadam Vyavarnayandu Lokan Vyamohayandi. So all these Advaitins that are trying to deceive the world by saying something that is very similar to the Vijnanavada school of Buddhism, which tells you that this empirical world or the entire objective world is essentially non-existent. So based on this, they also put forward this additional charge. The Advaita completely refutes, rejects the reality of God as such. This again is a total misunderstanding. So, in fact, there is a well-known book, it's the Khandana Khandakadya. Khandana Khandakadya is an important book. It's a very, very dialectical, very dry dialectical, polemical work, but very important for a work for the students of Advaitic dialectics. So the author is Sikharsha. So he says, Ishvara Anugraha Deva Pumsam Advaita Vasana Mahabhaya Paritrana Ditranam Eva Jayate. So this again a statement by the most cutthroat dialectical Advaitin, Sikharsha, who wrote Khandana Khandakadya. The name of the title is something interesting. That is a book which refutes, which eats, which swallows, that's a meaning, literal meaning, which swallows, which eats up all the negative arguments against Advaita. So the book is eating up, it swallows all the allegations against Advaita. Now, that's the meaning of this text itself, literally meaning, Khandana Khandakadya. Ishvara Anugraha Deva Pumsam Advaita Vasana. Advaita Vasana means an interest in Advaita comes to you only as a gift from God, as a blessing from Ishvara. Mahabhaya Paritrana Ditranam Eva Jayati. So this Advaita Vasana is something that takes you across the fear of samsara, the fear of this endless cycles, transmigratory cycle of birth, life, death and rebirth. Again, this Advaitic idea was taken up by a later Advaitin philosopher, named Appaya Dikshita. I referred to him earlier. Appaya Dikshita is one of the most prolific writers belonging to post-Shankarite period. He wrote almost 100 important works he wrote. Not only on Advaita, he wrote books on Mimamsa, he wrote books on aesthetics, of course, most of his books are on Advaita. So, he was a great literary critic also. So, he says, Adapya Anugraha Deva Tarunendu Shikhamanehi Advaita Vasana Pumsam Avid Bhavadina Anyatha. See, without the blessings of the Lord, you cannot really get this interest, even academic, intellectual interest in Advaita. It's impossible unless you reach a level of spiritual evolution, because the path of spiritual evolution follows the path of becoming more and more introspective. That is, there is an evolution, there is a progression from many to one, from without to within, from gross to subtle, from personal to transcendental, which is beyond personal impersonal equation. Now that higher thinking, which in short it means, you can always believe in a God who's going to be happy if you live according to his doctrines, strictly according to his doctrines. And if you go to a temple or a church or a place of worship, perform certain rituals, injunctions given in books, and if you follow a life according to those rules and regulations, your God will be happy. This is okay. But this is the beginning of spiritual journey. As you evolve further, as you move further to higher and higher levels of evolution, then eventually you reach, well, even if I cannot go to a temple and worship from ritual, still, if I can experience the presence of the divine, the presence of God everywhere and in everything, I look upon everyone and everything as the expression of the one divine reality. Well, that is the zenith of spiritual progression. So it can come to you only as a special gift from God. That's the meaning of statements coming not from Dvaitins but from Advaitins. That's a remember. So how can you charge Advaitins to be against bhakti, against devotion? Now we are going to discuss here Madhvacharya's definition of bhakti. And we are also going to discuss, of course, we discuss elaborately the doctrines of Ramanuja. In fact, we had many sessions on prapatti, bhakti, and so on. So we won't deal with Ramanuja's system right now because we had so many sessions on Ramanuja, who was one of the greatest geniuses in India's devotional philosophical tradition. So now, Madhvacharya says, Jnanasya bhakti bhagatvad bhaktihi jnanamitiryate. Jnanasyaiva vishesho yet bhakti iti abhidiyate. Parakshatva aparakshatve vishesho jnanagau yatha. This is Madhvacharya. His Anuvyakyanam, one of his important books, he writes. What it means is, knowledge is a constituent of bhakti, devotion. Therefore, the bhakti is very often referred to jnana. They are the same. Now remember, you have to remember in this context, Shankaracharya himself mentions in his Gita Bhashya that bhakti and jnanam at the experience level are the same. Shankaracharya mentioned that, Advaitins mentioned that. You have to, because you put in context, then only we will understand the contrast. It's a contrasting study. Madhvacharya tells here in Anuvyakyanam, for example, bhakti is jnanam, knowledge, is an aspect of bhakti. Therefore, bhakti is frequently called by the word jnanam, knowledge also. But then, of course, however, there is a distinctive aspect of attachment is sought to be emphasized. The fusion is designated as bhakti. So remember, that of course it cannot be the same because for one reason, Madhvacharya clearly draws a line of demarcation between God and the spiritual seeker, the devotee. The devotee can never become one with his cherished spiritual ideal. Impossible. There is always a distinction. But in Advaita, at the highest level of bhakti or devotion, you feel that God is seated in your heart. And you'll be interested to know that this is also the highest concept in Shankaracharya's devotional hymns, which I am going to discuss today. I will read out. There is a well-known, I referred to this earlier, Chadushashti Upajara Puja Stotram, which is actually a very elaborate description of all the rituals involved in worship, image worship. So at the beginning, the devotee is telling Divine Mother, Devi Chadushashti Upajara Puja Stotram, that's a real title. Kada Devi Manasa Puja Stotram, it's a devotional hymn, very long one, which describes different practices and rituals when you do puja or worship. First, you say good morning to Divine Mother. So, Ushasi Magada Mangalaja, that's how it begins. I will discuss this. And then you offer a place for the Divine Mother to sit. And then you offer Divine Mother flower, incense stick, diba, dhuba, and many things you offer. So, and then finally at the end of the stotra, the devotee asks the Divine Mother, please be seated, not on this elevated platform I have put in front of you, but now you be seated in my heart. And that's a conclusion of worship. So where does it end? The Divine Mother, the God. So Divine Mother here is symbolic. Any deity, if you are worshipping any God for the matter. See, Ekam Sat Vipra Bhagavata Vadanti. Different deities, different names of God are only different ways of addressing the same divine reality. So at the last stage of puja or worship, you are invoking the presence of the divine within your heart, becoming one with the divine. At the beginning, you are invoking the avahanam, you are invoking the presence of the divine on the seat that you have kept in front of you, and you are invoking the presence of the divine there. Finally, after offering everything, after meditation, after all these rituals, finally the puja concludes with a request from the devotee, now God, please be seated in my heart. So, from rituals to beyond rituals. Every ritual is meant to help you to transcend rituals. Every Dvaita form of spiritual practice is meant to take you beyond Dvaita. Every gross form of spiritual discipline is meant to take you towards the subtle form of divine experience. Now, in the Gita Bhashya, there is a well-known verse which I referred to on many occasions earlier, 10th verse of the 13th chapter. Maicha ananya yogena bhaktihi avibhijarini vivikta desha sevittum anabhirjana samsati. What is pure, unwavering devotion? So that is the topic of discussion. And the great commentator Shankaracharya, remember, the Advaitin teacher tells you, Maicha Ishware Ananyayogena Pratak Samadhina Na Anyo Bhagavato Vasudevat Paraha Asti Ata Sa Eva No Gitihi Ityevam Nischida Abhibijarini Buddhi Ananyayoga Tena Bhajanam Bhakti Na Vibhicharana Sila Abhibijarini Na Vibhicharana Sila Abhibijarini Bhakti. So the unwavering devotion, Abhibijarini Bhakti, is something that never wavers, that remains steady, that remains strong. And Sachajnanam, that is knowledge also. So, the highest devotion, the purest devotion is also the highest knowledge. But according to Madhvacharya, you have to remember, Jnana and Bhakti are different, but they are related. Jnanam or knowledge is a constituent of bhakti. Bhakti is the highest. So bhakti is a devotion to a personal God. But that personal God is a God with name and form. And by His grace, you get moksha or liberation. So Madhvacharya, he classifies bhakti into three stages. First one, a bhakti that proceeds actually from what you call immediate knowledge or maybe indirect knowledge. That is paroksha jnana. You read books, you pray, you have a strong belief, faith, so to speak. So faith is only, or belief is only the first step in our spiritual life. Belief is not experience. So belief is only the first step in our spiritual evolution. The second step is the intermediary stage between belief and the higher mystical experience. So mystical experience, according to Madhva, is nothing but experiencing the grace of God and getting liberation by God's grace. So the second state is a state that follows that mediate knowledge or parosha jnana. And the third one is the third that comes after this aparosha jnana. When you already reach the direct experience, aparosha jnana. Direct means it is not external, it is not pratyaksha. At the same time, it is not remote, so it is not paroksha, but it is aparoksha. It means, let's say, a devotee actually begins to feel that God is real. That state is a very important state, because most of the devotees, they believe, they're theists, they believe in God, they do charity, they have what we call fear of God in Abrahamic traditions, which is wonderful. So they try to live an ethical, moral life according to some spiritual disciplines. But it's only indirect, remote, because the reality of God has not actually become real in their actual life. And then the next stage, your conviction actually goes beyond belief. And then the real experience. And this experience can happen to anyone. According to Shankaracharya, let's say, if a Christian, I'm applying that Advaitic principle in a non-Vedantic, non-Hindu context. Let's say a Christian mystic who actually comes to the highest stage, where he really feels the reality of God in his life, that is called aparosha jnana. Now, that doesn't happen through rituals. Rituals can help you to eventually reach the road that takes you there, but rituals directly cannot go there, because rituals always imply formal or formalistic worship, or religion always implies some kind of a barrier. You are trying to believe in God. That's what we actually do. We are trying to believe in God. So we may write in the paper, I am Christian, I am Hindu and Buddhist and so on. Jew, I am Jew, or anyone. But then there's an attempt to believe in God or believe in religion. Because once you believe, your life changes. So that aspect Madhvacharya also accepts. So after direct realization, get aparoksha jnana, the highest. But then, of course, Madhvacharya says in the Anuvakyanam again, bhaktya jnanam tato bhakti. Tado drishtis tadascha sa, tado muktis tado bhakti saiva sya sukharupini, this Anuvakyanam. So he says, bhaktya jnanam tado bhakti. So, through bhakti, you get jnanam. And from jnanam, you get bhakti also. So, these are interrelated. They go together. But eventually, tato muktis tato bhakti. Saivasya sukharupini. So, the three stages of bhakti are being designated by Jayatirtha as Pakka Bhakti, Paripakka Bhakti, and Ati Paripakka Bhakti. Paripakka means, it literally means fully cooked, means mature, highly evolved, well established as a meaning. So one is fully established, rather well established, that fully established, then extremely well established, rooted, well rooted. This last one, the last stage is an end in itself. Highest paripakva bhakti is the ultimate goal of every devotee. So, it's a kind of, it brings you a kind of ineffable, inexplicable joy. That's why Madhvacharya says, Bhaktisya Sukharupini. It brings a lot of joy, a lot of enjoy, a lot of, it's not joy as according to the English word that is used, it's a kind of inexplicable feeling that there is nothing more to be achieved, nothing more to be aimed at, nothing more to be sought after. You feel a kind of extreme, intense contentment. So Madhvacharya's statement of bhakti, in a way, it comes, in many places, it comes very close to Narada, Shandilya and others. But in Narada and Shandilya, the traditional bhakti philosophers, you find a lot of references to a kind of transcendental experience, which in a way very close to Shankaracharya's own concept of bhakti. But here, of course, the point is that Ya sarvaguna sampurna sarvadosha vivarjitaha priyadam prida evalam vishnur me paramasuhrit. So, this is actually a well-known book. He wrote a well-known book on Mahabharata Tattvarya Nirnaya. And he has got a tika also by other Madhvas. So, Madhva himself believed in this supreme mood, a kind of diyamanam na grinnanti. So, there is a kind of inner, higher experience. Yep, sarvaguna sampurna sarvadosha vivarjitaha prida evalam vishnur me paramasukrit. So, when you reach this stage, what happens is, you feel that God is your best friend, God is so close to you. In the context of Madhvacharya, Vishnu, God is his best friend, best protector. In some ways, it comes very close to the definition of, or the place of God in Ramanuja's Prapatti Sankalpa, Prakati concept, Prapatti, where Ramanuja says, Anuvilyasya Sankalpaka, Pradivilyasya Varjanam, Rakshasidi Vishwasa Goptrutta Varanam Tatha. So God will protect me, and looking upon God as the only Gopta, as the only guide, or as the only protector. So that kind of feeling, looking upon God as the only protector, as the only support. So, and also in Madhvacharya's words, the best friend, Paramas Suhurt. That is what Madhvacharya writes. Bhaktya prasanna paramo dadya dajnana manakulam bhaktircha bhuyasim tabhyam prasanno darshanam vrachet. So, in fact, they say, according to some of the writers, no other Vedantin has given expression to his firm faith in the indispensability. It means bhakti is essential. Without bhakti, no one can get the highest liberation. This is just a short survey of Madhvacharya's views on bhakti. Now, we will come to something very interesting in Advaita, because my purpose in today's class is to show, on the one hand, the sublime views of Madhvacharya on bhakti, and then at the same time to show that Advaita is as much a philosophy of bhakti and devotion as of knowledge. So in Advaita you find the highest bhakti, the highest jnanam are the same. So I can just quote from this Devi Abhiradakshavavana Stotram, which is a very famous. Let me see if I got a book here, because it's very, very long. Only some mantras I know memorize the whole thing. It's a very, very long. But anyway, just a few I can say. One example from Sivananda Lahari, before going to Devi Abhiradakshavavana. Chatusashti Pujara Puja Stotram, which is called, I am coming to another very important devotional hymn by Shankaracharya. It is called Sivananda Lahari. The reason why we are beginning with this in our discussion on Advaita concept of bhakti is, it is this one particular verse, it should be understood against the background of a very beautiful, a charming episode which Shankaracharya graphically describes in 4 verses, which shows you the sublime nature of Advaita concept of bhakti. Now the verse is, for those of you who can read later, it is found in the Sivananda Lahari. So Shankaracharya wrote a number of more than 100 bhakti hymns, devotional hymns, on God conceived as Shiva, as Vishnu, as Divine Mother, and so on. So this one is Maga Vartita Paduga Pashupatehi Angasya Kurchayade Kandushambu Nishechanam Puraripoho Divyabhishekayade Kinjit Bhakshita Mamsas Seshagabalam Navyopaharayate Bhakti Kimna Karoti Ahamaho Bhaktim Kimna Karoti Aho Vanacharo Bhaktavadam Sayade. So how a primitive hunter living in a thick forest is extolled as Bhaktavadamsa, means the highly elevated, the highest devotee. So that means the highest devotee here is described against the background of a interesting incident that is transmitted from generation to generations of teachers and students. So it's supposed to have taken place in a place called Kalahasti in India. There is a Shiva temple. So the verse, this particular verse, 63rd verse, actually refers to that. Marga Vartita Patuka Pashupatehi Angasya Kurchayade, means it begins, So there was a hunter, a primitive person living in thick forest. Every day he used to hunt animals, used to eat meat and live a very primitive life. There is a Shiva temple. And he noticed that one priest used to come in the morning and perform ritual, puja, worship, the Shiva, to the Shiva image, Shiva temple, and go back to his home. But the priest noticed something interesting. Every time he reached the early morning, he found there was some pieces of meat, raw meat, and dirty water on the image of Shiva. Every day morning he came, he found this. He used to clean all this with Ganga water. He used to decorate the Shiva image. He used to offer many wonderful things. Called Naivedya, means cooked food or sweets, all the people, Hindus, offer their deity. So this priest used to take bath in the Ganga and do all these rituals, and used to perform these rituals with great care and attention, all absolutely perfect without any deviation from the traditional way of worship. But he found every day morning the place was dirty, the image was found to be dirty, and there were raw pieces of meat lying around. So one day he hid himself. He stood somewhere, hiding himself behind a tree, watching to find out who is the culprit who comes to this temple. Every day he is coming sometime in the afternoon. So he wanted to catch this man, this mischief maker. And then he found, in the afternoon, he found a primitive looking person, a hunter with his bow and arrow, coming with a lot of pieces of meat, and he was making an offering, and he didn't have water, no Ganga water, but he had collected water in his mouth from the nearby river. He had no vessel to collect water. So he collected this water for washing the image. He collected the water in his mouth and he spat on this image. And he offered his raw meat. He was doing this. But that one day he found, the day when the priest was watching the whole thing happening, the hunter found there was some kind of this. There was a peculiar expression on the eyes, maybe some inflammation or something. So he immediately started praying loudly. Okay, the image is Shiva's image. Oh Shiva, what happened? What happened to your eyes? He thought he heard a divine voice. If you can give me your eyes, then only it can be cured. The hunter immediately took a knife, pierced one of his eyes, and offered it to the image of Shiva. After offering the meat, other piece, the priest is watching from a distance. All this happening, clearly looking at the whole thing. So one of his eyes he pierced, took out, and placed on Shiva's image. But then he wanted to take out the other eyes with his knife, piercing it, taking it out. So if he takes out the second eye, then he won't be able to, he may miss the image. He won't be able to know where to keep it. He may keep it somewhere else because the image will be, he won't be able to see the image. So what he did, he took his own old rotten sandals, chappals, what do you call it? That's why, Marga Vartida Patuka means these shoes or maybe chappals which have become so old because we were using it for years and years, so the shoes have become so worn out, so old. He took it and kept between the two eyes so that he will not miss the right place where he can keep the second eye. Because he will be blind at that time. When he is about to take out that second eye, immediately God appeared before him, and that's what happened. He became a great mystic. He was taken to heaven. This is a story. This is a story. So Shankaracharya refers to this incident. That's why he says, Maga Vartita Patuka means the shoes or sandals or chappals which have become so worn out by constant use for years. Pashupadehi Angasi Kurchayade. So he kept it right in the middle of the two eyes above. And then Gandu Shambu Nishechanam Puraripoho Divyabhishekayade. So what he did, water that he had collected in his mouth, that became Abhisheka. Abhisheka, you have to utter mantras. It is a ritualistic way of pouring water, Ganga water and things like that on the image. So he did not have Ganga water or anything. He had only the water that he had collected in his mouth, he spat out. And then, of course, it goes again, Kinjit Bhakshita Mamsa Seshakabalam. He had meat with him, pieces of meat, raw meat. But he had tasted it because he wanted to make sure that meat is of high quality. And so the leftover, part of what he had eaten, that he offered. And that is Navyopahara, that become Naivedya, means the offering. Bhakti kimna karoti aho vanacharo bhaktavadam sayate. So what bhakti cannot do to you, the highest bhakti. And that Vanachara means somebody who walks in forest. He became an example of the highest devotion. Now, this you should remember is coming from the teacher of Advaita. Now, where do you place Madhvacharya, Ramanuja, who accuses Shankaracharya of having no devotion? So, just giving an example, that's all. So, there are very, very wonderful things. So, these are the devotional hymns actually. Devotional hymns. Not only devotional hymns, but even in important philosophical works, the teacher of Advaita goes to sublime heights in describing the highest, the most transcendental devotion. Now remember, this kind of this is of examples of the highest and purest and most transcendental devotion you can find in the lives of many mystics. In all traditions you find extreme humility, pure raw devotion, devoid of all the paraphernalia of rituals and mechanical practices. Pure devotion. That is found only in Dvaita. Now, in the Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita tradition, I'm not making fun, you find, see, of course, if you go to some of the temples, in Swami Mandirs and many big temples, in not other temples also, you find God is such a great glutton. So, I mean, the food that is offered, the varieties of sweets offered, the deity. Now you can imagine with extreme paraphernalia, mechanical rituals and performances and all that, So that's not wrong, absolutely, that's not wrong. But that kind of elaborate mechanical worship is only a stepping stone, a means to reach this higher devotion that you found in the life of this poor, humble hunter. The priests have to practice his ritualistic devotional worship for many, many life cycles to be eventually born with the kind of devotion that this hunter, this humble, primitive hunter had, because he was ready to offer his own eyes to God. And without a doubt, he felt somebody told him, a divine voice came from somewhere, I can be cured of my eye sickness only if you can offer your eyes. So it seems, the story tells you that God was trying to test his pure devotion. So these are some of the examples you find. That means you just cross the barrier of formalism and mechanical worship, mechanical rituals, then only you evolve to the highest devotion. Now Shankaracharya himself says, so it is Brahma Sutra Bhashya. Those who hear God, you can look at this text somewhere, Brahma Sutra Bhashya, chapter 3rd, second pada. Brahma Sutra has got 4 padas, 4 important parts, and 5th sutra. Paryabhidhanattu tirohidam tadohi asya bentha viparyayo. It's an interesting discussion. If jiva, individual soul, and Brahman are the same, I mean, if they feel there is one is part, other is whole, then you cannot say that they are the same, because jiva, the ordinary individual soul has so many imperfections, but God has no imperfection. So they have 2 different kinds of dharmas, characteristics. So it will amount to that kind of difference. So Shankaracharya in his commentary is answering this Purvavaksha. Tat punasthirohidam sat parameshwadam abhidayado yatamanasya jantoho vidhudadhvantasya timira tiraskrita eva drikshaktir aushadaviryat ishara prasadad samsiddhasya kasyajit eva avirbhavati na subhavata eva sarvesham jantuvinam kutaka tato hi ईश्वरात् हेतोः अस्य जीवस्य बन्धमोक्षो भवतः ईश्वरस्वरूप अपरिज्ञानात् बन्धः ज्ञानात् मोक्षः तत्स्वरूप परिज्ञानात् तु मोक्षः. Now, I shall explain this very elaborately in this context, what this means. So, an ordinary individual soul, he has divine attributes, jiva, the divine attributes of jiva. But they are not manifest. You can easily understand. Suppose Advaitins tell you that Brahman and jiva are the same. the absolute reality, and different souls, different self, different jivas are the same. But you find God is supreme, God is full of divine attributes, or jnanam, bhakti, all the highest, all the bhagas, everything, but ordinary individual beings are endowed with so many imperfections. So how do you reconcile this contrast? So Advaitins are answering this. So Bhashikara says that Punaka Tirohidam Sat Parameswaram Abhidayatu Yatamanasi Jantuhu Vidudvandasya Timira Tiraskadeva, etc. Now I shall explain this. All these attributes, the attributes of the divine, remain hidden in a jiva. They become visible only in the life of certain real spiritual aspirants. Those who practice spiritual disciplines, live a pure life, and as they progress in their life, they begin to manifest, they begin to show in their life many of these divine attributes which we normally attribute to God. This is a very important principle, and actually it has got relevance in our own times. You find in certain traditions that the more you chant God's names, the more you pray, the more you claim to be a devotee of God, the more ungodly you become, the more inhuman you become in your interaction with others. You can just imagine. Bhashikara Shankaracharya says, see, Sat Parameshwar Abhidayato Idamanasya, somebody who is practicing spiritual disciplines, is meditating on God, then what happens, that meditation will have a transformative effect on his life. He becomes a better human being, he becomes compassionate, he becomes self-restrained, he becomes friendly with everyone, he doesn't hate anyone, he doesn't do any harm to anybody, because these are the qualities and characteristics of God. So when you meditate on God, those very attributes and qualities of God, whom you meditate upon, you become endowed with those sublime qualities. And what happens is, slowly, that person begins to open his inner spiritual eye. Like somebody who is suffering from timira, maybe something like jaundice, some kind of a disease that prevents affects your eyesight. So when you get certain diseases, you may see something in yellow color. You may not see an object in the true color of the object. So your vision will be colored by your disease. You'll be affected by the disease that has affected the eyes. So, but when you get medicine, you are cured of that disease. Similarly, when you practice spiritual disciplines, when you practice sadhana chatushtaya sambhati, as mentioned earlier, many times we discussed, when you practice spiritual disciplines, self-restraint, contentment, a sense of what is real, what is unreal, discard what is relative, what is unreal, and uphold the higher spiritual principles, the strong, sincere desire for spiritual enlightenment. When you become endowed with all these qualities, what happens is the disease is cured. You begin to see things in their true color. So, what happens is, in the same way, a jiva regains, a jiva means individual soul, he regains his spiritual characteristics, godly characteristics, by practicing spiritual disciplines. Because bondage is always caused by ignorance of God, of the absolute reality. And liberation is a result of knowledge. Of course, here, Shankaracharya comes very close to Ramanuja and others in his conception of the divine as Ishvara, Parameshwaram Abhidayataha, he means. somebody who is meditating on Supreme God. So that person slowly, Drik Shakti Raushada Viryadi Ishwar Prasadat. So, by God's grace, he is liberated, just as you are liberated from the disease when you take medicine, Aushada medicines. So this is a very, very important principle. Na subhavatah eva sarvesham jidduinam kudaha. It doesn't happen to everyone. It happens only to those who practices the spiritual disciplines. Now remember, so the common criticism that you find among many non-Advaitins, the Advaita doesn't recognize the reality of a personal God. Advaita is a life-negating, world-negating idealism without any concept of a personal God. That view is totally wrong. So, for at least 400 years before Madhvacharya was born, 300 years before Ramanuja was born, Shankaracharya written these wonderful things about devotion. I can finish this with another very important reference to the famous Chatusashti Bhujara Puja Sotram, Devi Chatusashti Bhujara Puja Sotram. Remember, this is a very, very famous verse and sacred for all devotees in Hindu tradition. It's also called Devi Manasa Puja Stotram. So, what do you do when you want to greet somebody? You say good morning. So a devotee tells good morning to God, to Divine Mother. Says, Usasi Magada Mangala Gayanaihi Jaditi Jagrihi 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 Ati Kruvadra Kadaksha Nirikshanaihi Jagadidam Jagadamba Sukhi Kuru. So, it's a kind of meditation. So, you are in your heart, you are meditating the Divine Mother. Here God is conceived in the form of Divine Mother of the universe. So you mother, now you please get up. Early morning, you get up, you can hear the auspicious music coming from the temples. You please get up and open your eyes and look around and bless this world so that your entire creation is blessed by your compassionate look. And then, so this is a kind of meditation. And then what happens? You have put a seat in front of you. You ask the Divine Mother to be seated there. Kanakamaya vidardide shobhamanam disi purna suvarna kumbhayuktam manimaya banda madhyamehi mataha mai kripayasu samarchanam grihitum. So, Kripaya samarchanam grihidam. Kindly please accept my puja, my worship, this means. So, at the beginning, this avahana means you are invoking the mother to be seated on the seat. Kanakamaya vidardhi shobhamanam disi purna suvarna kumbhayuktam. So, here is a seat in front of you, which is very auspicious. Please be present on the seat. Like that, so you are the divine energy that is omnipresent, present everywhere. That divine energy is invoked to be present on the auspicious seat. And you meditate as if the divine presence is there on the seat. Then you perform a number of rituals. So the verse runs to 72 verses. And at the end of this hymn, the devotional classic, after offering flowers, incense stick, light, everything that you can see, 64 rituals are involved here. After that, Esha Bhaktya Tava Virachida Yamaya Devi Puja Sugurtyainam Sabadi Sagalam Me Aparadhan Kshamaswa Nunam yattattava karunaya purnada medu sadhya sanandam me hridayakamale testu nityam nivasaka. May hridayakamale testu nityam nivasaka. Divine Mother, now you be present, you be seated in my heart. So after invoking the presence of the omnipresent divine energy on the seat in front of you, then you perform all the rituals for long, may take several hours, and then you request, you plead to the Divine Mother to be present, not on the seat, but in your heart. So, the God idea with form, with attributes, is transcended. And that divine energy is now present in our heart. So from Dvaita to Visishta Dvaita and Advaita. This is a journey of every spiritual worshipper. Puja mimam yap padati prabhade madhyarnagale yadiva pradoshe dharmartha kaman purusho abhivaidi dekhavasane sivabhavamedi. So, those who, these are just the, what you call phalasudhi, mean what are the benefits of reading this auspicious hymn in the morning, in the noon time, and also in the evening. And those who do it properly with a great devotion, they become one with the divine. So like that it goes. The point is, Advaita, the teacher of Advaita, was also the greatest ritualist. The teacher of Advaita also was the worshipper of the most auspicious idea of God with name and form. What it means is, it's our spiritual journey. So I wanted to refer to this work because there is no greater example. There are many. Shankaracharya wrote more than 100 spiritual devotional classics, but in the form of hymns. So what I mean to say, Advaita represents not only a kind of dry intellectual knowledge, as frequently alleged by many critics. Advaita accommodates within it both Vishishtha Advaita and Dvaita, both Jnanam and Bhakti, all the same. Now we can have interaction. You are most welcome. Thank you.
You essentially said that Advaitic experience is not at odds with Bhakti because of the many sayings and compositions of Shankaracharya.
Yeah.
The Ishvara is, in Advaita, is the collective Atman, Samashti Atma. Right? You said in the...
Yeah. You know, so that's right. So now, listen, now, very good question. So, when we discuss these Vedanta philosophical systems, you will find something very interesting. For some mysterious reason, the non-Advaitins, those who criticize Advaita, never refer to these devotional hymns. They never bothered to look at them. So if you look at the Advaita metaphysics, you find that God or Ishvara is a reflection, the cosmic reflection of Brahman on Maya. That's what it is. Now, that concept you will never really understand unless you understand these devotional hymns. This is very important. One may ask this question: why all these Advaitic dialecticians were going to temples every day, performing all the rituals every day, praying to different deities every day? They were writing about a God idea that goes beyond personal God, but they never went against personal God. So very often, those who don't study these works from a traditional teacher, if you only study from that's a big problem in modern academic education. Because in academic education, certain things will not become obvious, unfortunately so. I think So I can, do you think, suppose somebody went to a seminary or a university, Sorbonne, in European countries there were great universities which promoted theological studies for centuries. Those theological institutions never produced a Saint Teresa of Avila. You can produce an Augustine Aquinas, but they could not produce a Saint Teresa of Avila. They could not produce somebody like that great pilgrim in The Way of a Pilgrim, the great Russian mystical work of mid-19th century. The man, the humble peasant who understood the mystery of Jesus' prayer in real life, and because of his pure heart, he felt the reality of Jesus everywhere, and he became transformed into some transcendental divine plane of existence. That will not happen in a seminary, and that will not happen in a university where you study Dvaita books. So that's the thing. So if you analyze from an epistemological, metaphysical perspective, you will not catch the genius of Advaita, the spiritual genius of Advaita. They're totally different. That's a very important point to remember. One can argue to any length of time. See, I want something very important point to remember. At a philosophical level, there cannot be any reconciliation among these systems. Shankaracharya defeated all these great scholars of his time because they were willing to accept Shankara's thesis if they could not answer his question, and if Shankara could answer all their questions. That is why he defeated them. So, and that's because they were they were gambling with their life. You don't do that in a university. Today, two scholars debating on Advaita, Visitadvaita, Dvaita. After the debate, they will go and take their paycheck and go back to their place. Next day again they will do. But during Shankaracharya's time, they get first class air tickets, and again they will do the same. They will raise the same questions again. They make a livelihood out of it. But during Shankaracharya's time, and maybe during the time of some of the great mystics, they were gambling with their real experience or in their faith. That's why Mandana, who was defeated, became a monk, Sureshwara, according to many sources. So, that's why at the philosophical level, you can never really logically convince a person who is taking the whole thing from an academic perspective. Dvaita is something related to life. It is related to our own spiritual evolution. I mentioned earlier, at the beginning you may think God is living in your temple. Every day, in a specific day, if I go and if I do rituals, God is happy. And then you should do, all the rituals should be done properly. The mantra should be, pronunciation should be accurate, absolutely. Everything should be accurate. And God is happy. That is okay, but that's a kindergarten. That's what Shankaracharya says. That is not wrong, but that is only kindergarten. That's the PhD level. The hunter, for him, that's the PhD level. The hunter had nothing in his bag, only some half-eaten pieces of raw meat. But he had a pure heart. So for him, what he was offering was his own life. So you can see he did not observe the mechanical rules. Today you cannot go to a temple and collect water in your mouth and do abhisheka with that water. You remember? You can't do that. Absolutely no. So maybe it's a story, but these stories, they speak louder than many books. Because they show before you the true genius of the writer. So in a single verse, you just put the whole thing. The hunter is mentioned, his worn-out chappals are mentioned, and the way he was doing abhisheka with water collected in his mouth and mentioned, and then how he became the most sublime devotee, that is also mentioned in one verse of 4 lines. The genius, the essence of devotion philosophy and the essence of Advaita, both you find in one verse.
So, Swami,
Yeah.
my question is, in the Ramakrishna order, Ramanuja and Madhava are considered, along with Shankara, the three main people that are studied within the Ramakrishna order. Is that true elsewhere, or only the Ramakrishna order? I mean, are Ramanuja, Shankara, and Madhava considered the three greatest theologians, philosophers, religious
Yeah, that's
by
so.
all Hindus, or just by the Ramakrishna order?
No, I know. Of course, in Ramakrishna mission also, Ramakrishna order also, primarily most of our great monks, stalwarts were Advaitins, and the Ramakrishna order got its sannyasa orientation from Advaita, Puri, one of the 10 monastic orders Shankaracharya founded. And also our monastic rituals also based on the rituals that were followed by the monks of Shankaracharya's monastic orders. So that's one thing. In Ramakrishna order, we try to focus on the spiritual reconciliation of all systems in the life of Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. So Sri Ramakrishna, in a way, in his life and teachings, he reconciled, harmonized and reconciled all the three systems. And Swami Vivekananda himself put it in a very forceful statement. We are traveling from Dvaita through Visishta Advaita towards Advaita. So no system is left behind. And remember, the truth is, you are not always on the Advaitic plane. When you perform rituals, which we do, because there are certain needs, the organizational and institutional needs. You need temples, you need rituals, you need rules and regulations, which are necessary for any organizational structure. So, as part of that structure, we focus on Sri Ramakrishna's life and teachings as a reconciliation and harmonization of all three paths, Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, Dvaita. But in other monastic orders, to my understanding, like Chinmaya Mission and Shivananda Divine Life Society, they mostly teach and emphasize Advaita. But you don't get away with the impression that every person in the Ramakrishna order is well equipped with all the three systems, not necessarily. But our attitude, our basic philosophy is built upon the foundation of Sri Ramakrishna's life and his teachings, and how they were interpreted by Vivekananda during his spiritual ministry. That's a complete system. In a way, what Shankaracharya did to Hinduism and Vedanta in 8th century, Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda did to Shankaracharya's system in 19th century. And now, without this periodical reconciliation or reinterpretation, a kind of paradigm shift, this system may become obsolete. That's why we are today discussing ideas which were taught by great sages thousands of years ago. So that's very important. But this is just one part. The other aspect is, today, if you go anywhere in India and the world, wherever you find great spiritual teachers and seekers, no matter what tradition they were born into, there is a natural urge for something universal. This may not apply to cults and organizations. I am talking about the universal human aspiration for something universal, something transcendental, something that is all accommodating. This may become restricted and it may lose its original color in certain organizations where they close all the doors and windows to open inquiry. But Ramakrishna Mission is very open. If you don't have to be an Advaitin to be a member of Ramakrishna Mission, but you have a natural instinct to move towards Advaita because you read Vivekananda, you read Sri Ramakrishna. But that may not be true with other cults. Other cults, they begin, this is God, this is His name, this is the place where He is living, this is the way to worship Him, no other way. Now, whenever you come to that, you are closing the doors and windows. We don't do that. Our windows and doors are kept open all the time. This is a very important thing. That is true. In a way, that is true for Chinmaya Mission or other Ramana Maharshis. They are all very, very open Advaitis. But there are certain organizations, they are also doing good work actually. I told you earlier, if you chant some divine Sanskrit hymns, which give you joy and a sense of contentment, you don't do any violence to anyone. You are very non-violent, you are very peaceful, you teach good things, you do good things, but you have a narrow theological conviction, no problem. Okay, that's not even. That will be found, and I don't want to criticize any institution or organization. They are also doing their path. So Advaita has no problem with anyone. They are also part of Advaita. From our perspective, they may think they are something different. That's their problem. That's a different. Shankaracharya says, Asmadiyoyam Vaidiko Dharma na viruddhide Atma Ananyatva. This is a statement in the commentary on the mantra in the Gaudapada Karika. Susiddhanta Vyavasthasu Dvaitino Nischida Dridham Parasparam Viruddhyante Taihi Ayam na viruddhide. In that mantra, in Shankara's commentary, he says, we are not quarrel with anyone because even those who consider themselves to be different and distinct from us, they are actually not so from our perspective. That's the point. Okay? So wherever you find any noble soul, wherever you find, well, it doesn't, I don't feel it's okay to say, let's say certain people are permanent residents in hell. It doesn't appear to be very logical. At least I don't want to believe in a God who puts certain other people in a permanent hell. At least, so you will feel that way. I would rather believe in a God who has an open outlook. If you make amendments, all right, you can come in. But a God who keeps you, who puts you in a hell and then throws away the key. No one can find the key. Fine. Who imprisons you in a hell and then throws away the key, the door key. We don't feel at home with the God idea. That's a problem. That's why the shift towards Advaita among communities, traditionally Dvaitins. Okay, thank you.
Swami, Ramakrishna has shown us how to find the key.
Exactly, yeah. Sri Ramakrishna is, of course, Sri Ramakrishna brought, in fact, today there is a natural understanding. Well, if somebody is too narrow, we don't feel comfortable even in his presence. That's because of Sri Ramakrishna's advent in mid-19th century. Nobody said that. We are already there in our book. Shankaracharya said all this, many great teachers, but then it was all mostly confined to some elite circles, well-educated people, especially the Indian subcontinent, which today includes today's Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all those places. But it came out of Asian continent. But of course, in Asia, you can find the influence of Advaita in Bali, Sumatra, Java, Indonesia, Malaysia, all those places. But not outside Asian continent. That is a contribution of Vivekananda. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you. I shall add one point. Just, David, I want to see you to know how you react to this, so please come out. So, just imagine, suppose Vivekananda came to Chicago in 1893, and he, in his first speech, instead of putting this universal, all accommodating, all accepting, universal religion. Swamiji had given an idea of Madhvacharya's Panchabheda Siddhanta and the eternal damnation. I think Americans had plenty of that. I think in Calvinism, there are certain theological fringe groups who are very similar to Madhvacharya. I think Americans won't be amused to be reminded that certain people are permanent residents and God has thrown away the key. Hell cannot be reopened. So, I don't think Americans would have been amused. So, Swami Vivekananda gave a very modern interpretation of Advaita in the light of interfaith dialogue in the first Chicago address. He refers to different religious groups, communities who came to India and they were all accepted because of the influence of Vedic tradition, primarily Advaita. So Swamiji was actually giving an interpretation of the practical dynamics of Advaita in the light of interfaith harmony in his first Chicago address in 1893, September 11. Thank you. Thank you. Now please continue. Yeah.
Yeah, Swamiji, Pranam. You just taught us about all the attributes of Brahman are present in Jiva, but they are hidden. So I was just recalling Panch Mahavakya, one of the Panch Mahavakyas, Aham Brahmasmi. Is it the right interpretation of Aham Brahmasmi that all the attributes of Brahman are present in Jiva?
Yeah.
Or so what is the difference between Aham Brahmasmi or Aham Brahman? Are they two same thing or...
Yeah, so I'll come to that. Aham Brahmasmi is called Anubhuti Vakya. As when you listen to Tattwamasi Upadesha Vakya, the instruction, then you follow Mananam, Nididhyasanam to Lakshana Vakya, means Prajnana Brahma, Nayamatma Brahma. After long years of spiritual contemplations, finally, the experience dimension of Tattwamasi you experience. That is Aham Brahmasmi. So, Aham here is, either individual Jiva, Brahman, the universal supreme reality, they are the same. Asmi means unification. Now, the point is, this Aham Brahmasmi Mahavakya, the statement itself, is a penultimate state before reaching the Aham Brahmasmi Anubhuti. So, in the Shankara's commentary, to the end of the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, Chadusutra, at the end, Bhashyakara says, when you actually experience the truth of Aham Brahmasmi, then you go beyond the Mahavakya aspect of Aham Brahmasmi. So, because once you have reached there, then you don't even define it in terms of Aham Brahmasmi. It is beyond definition. So experience is only beyond definition. So Aham Brahmasmi Anubhuti is beyond Aham Brahmasmi Mahavakya. There, what I was looking for, I was searching for, meditating on, that is not actually different from the supreme reality present everywhere and present in me. When that experience comes, you go even beyond the Mahavakya. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.